Alrighty, everybody. So we are going to go ahead and start with round four, just after George finishes explaining any of the rules for being on stream. Players, again, this is obviously a streamed event, and some players might be new to the experience, but essentially just let them know to keep track of all their lore properly, and just if there's any questions, he'll go ahead and answer those if necessary. But for the most part, both players are ready to go, so we're going to go ahead and after a little bit of a rogue back to back, we are having a battle of the Titans here. We're gonna have Amber Steel against Ruby Amethyst. So the two top contenders for best decks in the format, battling it out in four on the fourth round in 3-0 fashion, as all should be. The top decks typically tend to float to the top of the tables, and no exception here. So we're going to see if these players can sort of maneuver these matchups in a different way from what we've seen before, or if it is going to be straightforward, very stock lists. I've seen a lot of different lists over the course of the day, so I expect some innovations to come even from some of these more well-established tier 1 decks, but for the most part, is going ahead and going wide, actually, and skipping the lore for Lilo on the turn 1, choosing not to trade it into Sergeant Tibbs. Definitely a defendable choice. That is going to be conducive toward having more of a slowed down game, and that is going to actually benefit the Amber Steel deck greatly because the fact that at some point during the course of this game, and actually he skips inking, right? So inking phase fully skipped, and that was not something fully planned out from the player on the right, as he could have actually chosen to ink, leave in hand and ink something like the Stitch on turn 3, and then obviously used a very powerful aerial. This could also be a sort of an elaborate bait in order to make it so that the red-purple player overextends on smaller character cards on the table in the early game, and then goes ahead and falls into a grab your swords trap. But now, after having drawn 2 cards and sung, I don't think that that really matters either way. So just fully falling behind is the Amber Steel player. Reluctant to... He does have ink. He is just a little bit reluctant to ink some of the very powerful cards that he has in hand, so opted to just skip a few of his turns. Deciding, okay, I don't really care if I fall behind in terms of tempo. I just want to keep the quality of my hand intact. And we'll see how that works out for him moving forward. I mean, again, that very powerful grab your swords in hand, able to be sung by Ariel. So does this Ariel get to survive the turn cycle? And in doing so, to sing grab your swords and getting max value from the grab your swords now because Mickey is tapped. This grab your swords is going to go ahead and deal with everything other than queen on the left player side of the table, and then Mickey is going to go ahead and be felled by something like this Stitch. So a full elaborate bait definitely working out. Here, just maximizing the card quality of the hand did the Amber Steel player, and now a lone queen on the side of the control player. And do these Lilos start questing? And they do, and patience greatly rewarded from the side of the song player, and just showing a little bit of an unorthodox playstyle, but it definitely working out here. And now no questing power on the side of the red-purple player, only the queen to draw extra cards, which is good enough for the most part, but demanding a be prepared and not being able to play one, as there is only 5 ink in play right now, and needing 7 ink in order to sing something like a be prepared. So this hardcast be prepared. So these Lilos, even when attacked down by this queen, are still going to get upwards value of 10 quest. So incredibly powerful opening here for what seemed like a falling behind Amber Steel. And again, that unorthodox sort of approach, basically saying, okay, I'm going to keep this power card Ariel. I need her in order to sing this grab your swords and then take control of the field again. And it worked out masterfully because now Lilo sort of acted as a bodyguard for this queen to not deal with Ariel. And Ariel is going to be able to sing yet again. So understanding his position in the matchup and understanding that he has more than enough time to ink over the course of the next few turns, and you have Forgotten Me picked up here, and it's going to be incredible in this scenario. This Ariel is actually going to be able to sing a second copy of Grab Your Swords, theoretically, deal with the queen completely, leaving 0 cards in play for the control player. Both Lilos are going to be used, and then even a Be Prepared could have been used, but actually deciding to do a even more aggressive line of play and using all of his cards to quest and just hard playing the Grab Your Swords. So that second Grab Your Swords, incredibly powerful here. And another consequence of this sort of aggressive line of play where you ink for 5 is that you can then curve out to ink for 6 with Tinkerbell in the following turn if something like that is available. So all around fantastic choices from the side of the song player, and just might be a consequence of incredible amount of practice. I mean, it takes great understanding of the hand that has been awarded to you in order to navigate that sort of skipping ink for 2 turns in a row, and then understanding that it doesn't matter in terms of tempo. What matters most that you're going to be able to seize control of the field at some point with Grab Your Sword, allowing him to fall behind. And the red-purple player completely playing into first Grab Your Swords and inevitably the second one as well. So, and then here I do suspect that there's not going to be a hand reset. I mean, there could be a hand reset if he feels like he has to, but going up to 14, I mean, he just probably doesn't care at this point. To give his the red purple player any more resources and expecting Be Prepared the following turn. I mean, definitely being prepared for it or just playing into it completely. So he actually doesn't care about the possibility of Be Prepared because it would take up the entire turn. These mirrors would not be able to be activated, and this queen would be lost as well. But queen being able to replace herself with drawing a card, this forces it. This is basically saying it is 100% game over if Be Prepared is not put on the table this turn. Okay, Elsa is the other option here, good enough to stop these Lilos from outright winning the game on the following turn, but needs to combine these cards with Queen attacking these Lilos down, or it's not going to have enough time to stop the onslaught. I mean, the damage might already be done. At 14, just top decking from the rest of the game might be enough to close out the game. We'll definitely see if the sort of suboptimal start from the Amber Steel player, even though he did craft that game state all his own, it was not 100% how he would have wanted the early game to start. But I mean, he made the best he possibly could have out of it. Yeah, the Captain Hook trading with Queen. Queen not taking down again these Lilos on one side, opting instead to try to draw into that Be Prepared that clearly is not readily available. Taking the Stitch, going up one quest at 15, looking very dire, even if a Be Prepared is top decked at this point. Is it going to be enough? I mean, Prepared sung by this Elsa, then using mirrors twice in order to refuel the hand. It would be a fantastic sequence of events if he does have that line of play available to him. And he did draw extra cards. in order to be able to see this be prepared. So understanding that that's one of the only ways that he gets back into this game. But only Dragon Breath, and is that gonna be enough? Only 2 questing power left over. This hook, fantastic on offense, but not phenomenal on defense for questing purposes. So will the hand reset come through now as all resources have been expended? We could see something like a smash onto the Elsa, but then he'll have to choose. Okay, so then he can sing the draw 7 with his aerial, but he's not opting to do that actually. He is instead opting to just trade aerial smash and then lower to 16, and again just not wanting to give those extra cards to the control player. But honestly, the control player already has 2 mirrors in play, so presumably having all the cards that he could possibly want, giving him 7 more in order to give yourself 7 seems reasonable. But again, the song player has chosen not to, and he has proven that he's pretty good with the strategy overall, maneuvering out of his early turn plays. So, and if you need card advantage without giving card advantage to your opponent, Rapunzel, timely, incredibly timely, and just rewards the patience. Not using a whole new world, even though it was the last card in hand. But will something like a Maleficent be able to take down this Captain Hook? Captain Hook, not typical as an option for these decks, but again, is incredibly powerful because it can't be attacked down by these Archimedes or many other cards. So, in general, just a good option, and that's again another spicy choice. Like a lot of tech choices being shown over the course of this tournament. These players, again, some of the most competitive regions in the world for card games is South Florida, and these players showing their prowess and all their practice. So, we'd like to see that. Drawing extra cards, draw, draw, draw. That is what the Ruby Amethyst deck does best. But can it find removal for this Captain Hook? That is the #1 priority at this point in time. Hook again, another option for shifting on the smaller hook, and then that's basically another singer in the place of something like a Stitch or a Tinkerbell. So just another consistency piece. And I do like that approach, and masterful early game from the side of the song player, and just very happy to see him, understand his outs, understand that he does not have to ink every turn, even in the early game, in order to find an advantage. As long as at some point during the course of the game, he can solidify an advantage with the grab your swords, it is more than good enough to close out a game. So incredibly great gameplay from our right-sided player. Left-sided player did nothing wrong there, but just got savagely out-tempoed by the early game warrior swords. And I would say just playing around that possibility by thinking more of the smaller threats, maybe saving up some of the larger threats for later, is something that he could opt to do. The later uh, 2 and 3. See if he shifts a little bit of his sort of, matchup approach as games develop, but getting a little bit. Buying those extra cards definitely has to see a very crucial set of cards here. Something like Rafiki seems very important in the matchup. Would be stunned to not see that card in the assortment of 60 plus available. Red purple, one of the only strategies in the game that opts to play more than 60 cards, obviously because it can draw so much, because it has something like Ursula's Cauldron to properly select cards and better the top decks. So In the mirror matches, they can outlast opponents who might not be playing that many cards. So definitely not uncommon to play more than 60. And will the right assortment of cards show up the opening hand after the mulligans? We'll see. Spotted Simba. Don't know if Lilo is available to combo with that Simba, but as Hook. So there is the Captain Hook 1-drop that at some point gets shifted onto into the flying Captain Hook 5-drop, and I like that consistency piece. Normally, Stitch and Tinkerbell are the only shift targets, but playing that Captain Hook, playing another shifting threat, lets you sing more productively, especially in something like mirror matches. So, great addition overall. Shifting, an incredibly powerful mechanic here in the first set, just introducing, some cheeky plays that you can do, just turboing out these incredibly powerful larger threats at the cost of card advantage. But if you can gain back the card advantage with the tempo that it allots you, obviously it ends up being quite a good trade. So in Tibbs again, so we see the red purple player is now adapting to how he knows he lost in game one. He identified that, okay, these low drops are not going to be very useful in controlling the field. I'm going to instead use them for ink, play around that grab your swords, and then not let that affect me so heavily. So great adaptation from the purple player in the matchup, and I'm stunned that You Have Forgotten Me is inked here, but it's definitely inked instead of this Simba, and now I can see why, because now the Simba comes down with the Lilo. Great 1-2 punch in the amber color, the main reason to be in amber. Oh, and here's the song with the Maleficent into Friends on the other side. Incredibly quick gameplay from both players. Both players very comfortable with the selections of decks that they have made. Generally have been practicing for a long time, one would presume. So just great pace of play is appreciated. That may be one of the consequences as to why the guy on the right chose to think You Have Forgotten Me, is because just the red purple player is going to draw so many cards that it might not be that relevant over the course. If the red purple player has shown maybe a weaker hand, maybe You Have Forgotten Me would have been more crucial, but right now proving to be that important. Definitely trusting the song player to know exactly what to ink at the right time, as he showed in game one. Incredible prowess toward doing that. So can he get mileage out of this Lilo? And again, red purple about to be 3-for-1 by this, presumably. Is there a grab your swords? Got a glimpse of it earlier. Maybe this is not good enough. A grab your swords moment. Number player certainly proving his greed. Doing what needs to be done in order to win. Just trying to get as much mileage out of his cards as possible by saying, okay, I'm not going to grab your swords yet. I'm just going to trade effectively on the table. Force you to play a few more cards and then get max value from what presumably the last card in hand is grab your swords. So like the patience, like the fact that these Litos have not been committed yet. But will it get punished? Will the patience get punished? That has been the question for the course of the day. A little bit of a soft punish as the Simba goes to the discard pile with the broom, and then the broom gets recycled. The recycled broom recycles Maleficent. So much recycling going on. Might as well be red, purple, green, as it is going green here. Now top deck, and what is top deck of choice? It seems like a Stitch of some kind. Grab your swords. Good enough here. It was a stitch. Foil stitch too. It's cool. Maybe he did not have access to the garbage swords on the previous turn. So does this turn and timely. As now it deals with everything. The broom recycled. And so it's not as devastating as it would have been last turn, but again, no singing threat of any kind for the Amber Steel player in this game, and that's why he had to wait that unfortunate extra turn in order to be able to play Grab Your Swords. So again, the control player not as behind as he was in game one. Certainly could fall behind if he doesn't have an equivalent answer to this wide board on this turn. And this is where Amber Steel shines in the beginning when there is no such thing as a be prepared available for the control player to use to his advantage. These wide boards are incredibly threatening in the early game, so to see the Amber Steel player taking advantage of that. Now at 6, be prepared can be used as early as next turn. This queen, okay, so queen giving him extra card advantage, but right now it's not about the card advantage so much as about staying alive. Going up to 12 unless he uses the Tinkerbell effect to draw extra cards. We'll see if he actually wants to improve the quality of his hand or just eke out as much lore as possible. Their option, their selection is fine. Oh, he actually opts for a trade. So this is a fantastic trade actually because Tinkerbell survives at 3 damage and now not as excited as he would be if he had a Rapunzel in hand. So I doubt last card in hand Rapunzel, last card in hand Stitch. Going to 11, so is a be prepared here. I mean, be prepared on top decking with 0 cards. There's a be prepared on one side. There has to be a whole new world response on the other, or else things are going to become dire. But hesitation from the control player side indicates, at least to me right now, that there is no be prepared. But what is play Maui? Okay, so Maui. Decent here on this board. We're gonna go ahead and deal with Lilo and then deal with Tinkerbell, presumably, in order to cut off any sort of Rapunzel shenanigans that could come from the top of the deck. Leave him at 0 cards in hand with only 2 questing power against your full board. Not looking good for the Amber Steel deck, and this is what happens when you run out of steam, when you don't get that whole new world. But can he go ahead and top deck something magical here? Definitely have to. And then we'll see. Something tells me, based on his body language, he probably did not like a whole new world. But what he does have, that almost nobody on Earth has, is that really sick Lorcana hat, and I kind of just want that. That is a really, really cool Lorcana hat. Overall, how does he actually draw out of this scenario? Going into the tank, hands on face. Was the top deck good enough? This is a Rapunzel. This is the greatest slow roll of all time, but it's not. Okay, it's a it's a Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell good enough in this position in order to try and deal with either one of these threats. It's actually not going to clean up the other one unless the Stitch is committed. And surprising all around that he doesn't just try to quest for the remainder of the game. But let's see if his patience, again, his patience has been rewarded in the past, so it could be rewarded from here on out. But any sort of removal spell will prove very consequential against this Tinkerbell. And I did catch a glimpse of Maleficent, but not enough ink in order to use that one so far. So let's see what other options are available. Dragon Fire, okay, so there is that removal spell. Questing with the Tinkerbell. It would have paid off if he could set up the board in a better way, but allowing these 2 songs and then allowing ink plus a removal on Tinkerbell, now he's well and truly behind. And is this top deck enough? Tinkerbell was already decent. It is. So it is whole new world. And then we get to see 7 new cards. brand new lease on life almost. And at 11 lore, it's not outside the realm of possibility that if he fades something like a Be Prepared or a few removal spells along the way, he could eke out the victory over the course of the next few turns. And another reason why I would have wanted him to cash in a few questing points with that Tinkerbell, but either way, the way things stand right now, he does get to ink a little bit more, force out some sort of an answer to this Lilo. Every Lilo has to be answered before it quests at least once in a position like this. We have to see if those 7 new cards in hand prove effective. The control player, and the control player has proven in the past that this queen is just going to draw in the face of almost anything. I expect that to happen yet again. A Maui being incredibly powerful on board, but also a great singer too. Let's see if he gets value out of anything in particular. I just want to see a Haymaker right here. Something like a Maleficent. Just Maleficent. I was going to say eating Lilo, but that would make and, oh man. The carnage in our Lorcana stream. But otherwise, yeah, that's enough of a Haymaker, I guess. The mirror. Drawing him a few extra cards. Sergeant Tibbs sort of setting him up for a Grab Your Swords. So I do want to caution against that. Another Grab Your Swords target. So definitely, if Grab Your Swords is available, it'll get a good amount of value here, but even more value. So this is a check. Basically says, do you have Grab Your Swords? Do you have another option? It would be the 6 cards. It's 2. as they say, shift and placatang all over the field. But um, what are the options here? I do whatever happens. I do want to see this Lilo just cashed in. I mean, the fact that Lilo survived the turn cycle, it's a miracle all its own. So Stitch being cashed in does not have the shifting option, but he does have the Grab Your Swords. Caught a glimpse of that there. So that card is going to get massive value. Like it did in game 1, it's going to get massive value in game 2. And again, just proving that these small 2 willpower cards are just not the most effective options when dealing with what the Amber Steel deck is trying to do. I mean, one would think that contesting the field is important, but at the same time, just getting blown out by this Grab Your Swords time and time again. This Lilo, yep, just hits alive, you just use her. In a situation like this, going at 13. Just putting at 13 for the stream. Thank you very much. Opting to just pass the turn. So no way of healing from the side of the red purple player, so just a trade is going to happen here. Very decent there. And is it going to be enough with the remaining 4 cards in hand to try to eke out a victory? 13 a long way from that full 20. Here, Aladdin's going to take one off. Every single lore point being so precious in this scenario, and Aladdin just taking one away and also setting up for the shifting Aladdin on the others on the following turn. Just a really backbreaking card considering the scenario. Tinkerbell putting a little bit of damage. Denoting that he is at 12, not 13. Then how close can he get to that magical number 20? How does he most effectively force out these Be Prepareds in order to not lose as many cards as possible, while also taking Be Prepared out of the hand from the control player? That is the mini game that we have found ourselves in it right now. If we are the Amber Steel player. And Elsa, and that is a backbreaking Elsa. That Elsa is going to give massive value to this Aladdin. He can cash in the Aladdin before something like a Grab Your Swords tags it. Going ahead and getting rid of the Lilo. Doesn't really have to get rid of it this turn, but just opts to be safe and do so in case another Tinkerbell is played, then the current Tinkerbell does not have to be dealt with until the following turn, so that is quite nice. Simba, powerful. Not is it powerful enough at this point in the game remains to be seen. Now bodyguarding, deciding, okay, I'm just throwing all my cards out there. I'm not gonna bodyguard with Stitch. With Simba because Stitch doesn't need protection. Tinkerbell will be just fine on her own, and I need as many lore pips as possible on the table every turn cycle. So, opting instead to leave it untapped. Subtle choice, but a good choice nonetheless. Second Elsa, and the Elsa train has begun. Well and truly, after seeing this second Elsa from the side of Amber Steel, the first game went by very quickly. The second game has not taken that long. So I would definitely opt for a concession here from the side of the Amber Steel player just to go into that game 3 with a brand new hand, a brand new set of options, and enough time to close that game out and not secure myself a draw. So I would most definitely, after seeing that second, also consider moving it along to the next game. But he is deciding against that choice. He is fighting the good fight. Still a good amount of time left on the clock, but again, every minute counts when you're in this sort of against control scenario. So let's see if grinding out these next few turns is actually meaningful to him. I thought there's just so many different ways for the red purple deck to completely stunt any development, and being at, if he was at something like 18 or 19, I would understand staying in the game, but at 12, it is very astute to simply move to the next game and give himself as much time as possible. Again, time being a factor in round 1 and round 2 would again be a factor here, so he is heavily favored in the early game, so something like going to game 3, early game of game 3 would be incredibly good. Either way, he's playing it out. Writing is on the wall, however, with these double Elsa activating a return. Third Elsa having no feasible out to it. Gonna go ahead and simply gain 9 next turn is the control player. And there we go. Okay, so this will tag one of the Elsas. Put it to 4, does the other Elsa. And then this slows down the red purple player a little bit, taking care of the queen as well, but this is just preventing the inevitable and taking up even more time again. Time being a critical factor here. But he's fighting the good fight. You can really say this Tinkerbell has not been dealt with yet. I mean, does have to be dealt with this turn, and something like Shifting Stitch is also incredibly powerful, so that should trade it into as well. Awkward scenario where he could go ahead and take care of Stitch instead of Tinkerbell, but then something like Tinkerbell attacking, trading, and then dealing with something else is viable. The Watch. Okay, so Rabbit Watch, first time we've seen it on camera. Definitely a very powerful card. And there's small Aladdin, so setting up for shifting large Aladdin with... Oh, and he's just going to cash it in. So this is a good way to deal with the board. Also, presumably, going to take care of the Stitch. Leaving, again, the Amber Steel player at no cards. Only one card. His hand, and again, just making sure everything gets tapped and played. And again, just Amber Steel, if game 3 goes into a timeout scenario, I hope it does not come back to bite him, taking a few extra turns here. But that's okay. Either way, he's actually in a relatively stable position. He actually inks the song Ariel. This indicates a whole new world. Whole new world right here. New world always seems to be a breath of fresh air when played. So many options available to both players after this card is played. Fantastic overall. Eking ever closer to that 20 mark. Does the Stitch hook? Committing smaller threats might be a consequence of having drawn heavier top end cards. Really Simba, and he did not bodyguard Simba previously. I doubt that he will do so now. And actually deal with Elsa, and now it's going to be rushing Aladdin 7 drops, and that has to be nail in the coffin. You would suspect. Does he have an Aladdin to convert, lead into ultimately a victory? Aladdin just so difficult to deal with for these aggro decks. He's digging for it. He's digging for something. Digging for something. That is Aladdin. Oh wow. Okay, so he did top deck one. Does he have enough to play it and give it rush? I actually no, he might. Difficult to see with black sleeves, but instead opting to deal with Stitch and Rabbit's Pocket Watch. Definitely a one of the two of in most of these decks. Even though it's inkable, you don't want to flood on them, but green cards rush. Unbelievably powerful mechanic. Such a good card. These red purple decks that just turn basically every character they play into a removal spell. Phenomenal. Again, next turn is actually going to be that Aladdin seal the deal, you would suspect. I mean, we'll see. Has proven that questing with this Elsa is quite good, so there you go, does it again. Goes to 12 lore and actually draws a few extra cards. And I would caution toward if something like 2 more whole new worlds get played, how many cards are left in deck. Presumably these brooms have helped him not get milled out over the course of this game, so that's just something to keep in mind. Shifting for 3, so incredibly powerful choice right here. Goes ahead and deals with Elsa without further need for committing to the table, so just a phenomenal shifting hook. This hook not very commonly used, like I mentioned previously, but just incredibly powerful. That tempo play was insane. And he also gets to establish if he so chooses another Stitch. Does he want to play into Be Prepared? Does Be Prepared even matter to him anymore? Has so many cards in hand, so many options. It might actually not matter to him. And we see he went from, okay, I'm fighting through these Elsas with almost no control over the game to just being in complete control of board, hand and board. And that just goes back. Again, Elsa Train was not enough to stabilize the table. It gave the control player a lot of lore sitting at 12, the previous 0, but it didn't solidify a victory. And the average Steel player proving me wrong, understanding that he actually has as much grind game as he could possibly want with this Amber Steel list and this configuration with the Captain Hook, and the Captain Hook just proving incredibly powerful against these larger bodies with lower attack stats, with like the Elsa, like the Ursula, if we see one of those later on, proving that the shift for 3 is not only good for singing, but also good in combat. And this deck innovation might flip-flop who is in control of the late game in the matchup single-handedly, and he's proving its effectiveness here. So Captain Hook, unbelievably powerful addition to this song deck. But again, now we see full access to all the ink he could possibly want is the control player, and he has the Rabbit's Pocket Watch. Does he have a power play set up where he gets to Aladdin, give it rush, remove the Simba? Aladdin just so unbelievably powerful against these aggro decks. And just as Elsa came down, if Elsa train wasn't good enough, Aladdin train might just be enough. What other consideration does he have? Inking the Aladdin. He's just saying Aladdin train isn't necessary to beat you. I can do it with Maleficence. Certainly Hitting the good fight did the Amber Steel player, but if it wasn't Elsa, it is most certainly Aladdin. And is that sneaky mill to victory kind of place available? We'll have to see. It does have another whole new world, so could be an avenue that comes up. Rapunzel, draw 3. Drawing into options. What options does he end up having? Gaining back that 2 that Aladdin stole previously. Then Smash to deal with the Aladdin. Definitely needed that. Then this, in a way, punishes the inking of the second Aladdin. That second Aladdin, I mean, I would suspect was very much necessary. Stay afloat in this game, and now be prepared is of absolutely no consequence, as he might actually have counted the number of be prepares in this card and said, okay, you having be prepared in this scenario, incredibly unlikely, and I'm just going to put lethal in play every single turn, and I don't care what happens from here, I'm going to end this game no matter what. And that is a consequence of these Aladdins having rush from now on, but just having maximum amount of cards in hand, and also just a plethora of options, and even going ahead and hard casting this Be Our Guest show of dominance. And Amber Steel went from what I believe to be an unwinnable game, should be conceded into game 3, into just simply outright winning the game. No questions asked. So there you go. Just a masterful display of how Amber Steel can draw out of essentially any situation in game 1, and presumably triple Elsa in game 2 was still not enough. Undoubtedly showing that Amber Steel is top deck of the format. Presumably. Let's see if there is something like a Be Prepared that has something to say about that, but there is not. And is that enough to not lose on the way back? It does seem like we are shy of 1 in order to achieve victory, and this Maui is going to make it shy of 2. Definitely trade with this hook. This hook, absolutely instrumental over the course of the game. Wonderful to see that innovation. Just good in this matchup, but in the mirror match as well. This player just showing that he loves Lorcana with his Lorcana hat. Marching on to lone undefeated, one would believe. Questing. All he has to do from here on out. How does he most effectively deal with this Maui? Does he even care about dealing with Maui? I do suspect something like Ariel into Maleficent would be of value unless he wants to sing. He'd opt to discard the draw 7 earlier, so not be on that game plan right now. Does in fact trade. Seems like a very valuable trade on field, as the red-purple deck does not do well at dealing chip damage to cards. And he gets an extra value out of this one too, so these Rapunzels are masterclass at card advantage. And now lethal is presented in play. I would suspect, oh, and just getting rid of, actually cutting off the Aladdin out by getting rid of that pocket watch instead of the mirror. I do very much like that play, identifying what's actually worthwhile when it comes to using this beast, and just committing more to the field. At this point, I am almost 100% certain that he knows that Be Prepared is not available. No reason to overcommit if you did know that. So he knows that he has gotten rid of basically every out possible. And from the depths of defeat, he solidifies a complete victory. So expertly well played, the Amber Steel player. And oh, the was that one extra Be Prepared, but it was not available at the time. So masterclass from the singing deck. And again, highlight is that Captain Hook 5-drop just being incredibly powerful. We'll get to see if that comes up in future games. But for right now, we'll take a break. See you guys next round.